Hi everyone, I'm Anna Finch from Finch Press and the author of the debut novel Voiceless, A Mermaid's Tale. It's been about 2 weeks since my last video. I am probably going to be posting a video, if I can, once a week, but most likely once every 2 weeks. I am starting back at school. I've got one more day left of school holidays and then I go back to school and I'm and teaching and all that. So anyway, I'll talk about that in another video. So today's video is a book review. Now, I promised this a while ago. I only just finished literally maybe an hour ago. So the review is for These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. Now, this came out November. I read most of it when I went to the Grampians in December. I literally only just finished the last section like 2 hours ago. Yeah, so These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong is it's a loose retelling, or rather inspired by Romeo and Juliet. Basically, it is Romeo and Juliet set in 1926 Shanghai. For starters, before I get into any spoilers, I enjoy this a lot more than I enjoy Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. Now, I can see the influences of Romeo. So when I read through this, I could see some of the influences of Romeo and Juliet, but most of it is a very original, or at least for this particular type of tale, retelling. Yeah, so I'll read a blurb. I'll read the blurb and then I'll go into what I liked about it, what I didn't like. Anyway, so the year is 1926, and Shanghai hums to the tune of debauchery. A blood feud between two gangs runs the streets red, leaving the city in chaos. At the heart of it is 18-year-old Juliet Kai, a former flapper who has returned to assume her role as the proud heir of the Scarlet Gang, a network of criminals far above the law. The only rivals in power are the White Flowers, who have fought the Scarlets for generations. Behind every move is their heir, Roma Montagov, Juliet's first love and first betrayal. But when gangsters on both sides show signs of instability, culminating in clawing their own throats out, the people start to whisper of a contagion and madness, of a monster in the shadows. As the deaths stack up, Juliet and Roma must set their guns and grudges aside and work together. For if they can't stop this mayhem, then there will be no city left for either to rule. That description was actually what grabbed my attention in the first place for this book. That and the title. If you've read Voiceless, you know I've actually referenced the actual quote that is used on the cover. So in Romeo and Juliet, so the play, Shakespeare's play, not the Italian poem that Shakespeare based his play on. Anyway, we'll talk a bit about that later. One of the lines is, "These violent delights have violent ends, and like fire and powder, which as they kiss consume," something like that. And the only reason I know is because I put it in my book, but I also studied and taught Romeo and Juliet to a class. So These Violent Delights. Again, the title grabs the attention, and the cover is absolutely gorgeous. Very simple in the design. You've basically just got the dagger, a dragon, and some flowers. Now, again, very simple but interesting cover. And the use of the quote as the title, "These Violent Delights." So the actual quote, "These violent delights have violent ends, which like fire and powder, which as they kiss consume," basically is the basic meaning of it is that you need to be wary, because if you love too strongly, if you let love consume you, it's not going to end well for anyone. Your passions, your desires will conflict and consume you, and just consume everything in its path, and it's not good to be so passionate that you ignore everything around you. That's basic gist of what it is. And the use of that title is, use of that first part as a title is interesting, because it does give a hint as to what the story is about, or at least the past of some of the characters. So what I liked, first off, that it wasn't all lovey-dovey. We love each other and we'll die for each other in even though we've only known each other for 3 days. The story, it is fantasy. It does involve fantasy. So there's that. But even then, even though it has fantasy, it is still more realistic than Romeo and Juliet. Now, one thing it did differently is that's why I said it was a loose retelling. One of the things it did differently is that it focused not on the initial development of their relationship, so the relationship between Juliet and Roma. So it didn't focus on them meeting each other for the first time, falling in love. It didn't focus on that, which is good. The way they met, the way they met, the way they fell in love is actually hinted throughout the story, rather than the focus of the story, which is a good thing. So this is me being as vague as I can. I will probably end up mentioning a lot of spoilers, so if you haven't read the book, I suggest you go and read it. Yeah, it's highly worth it. Anyway, so the way they met, their romance, what was in the past. So it was something that happened before the story began, and it's woven in throughout. And what Chloe Gong did was interesting in that in Romeo and Juliet, so the original play, Romeo and Juliet, they meet at a party, they fall in love. I don't know how it's considered love if it was only 3 days. The poem is a lot more believable. Anyway, they fall in love, they marry. Romeo kills Tybalt. Romeo goes on the run. Juliet's forced to marry Paris. She pretends to die, pretends to kill herself. Romeo thinks she's really dead. He kills himself. She finds his body after she wakes up from the poison that she drank that made her look like she was dead, and then she really kills herself. That's the basic plot of Romeo and Juliet. And what this did is it takes everything, so the story, their love, their background, their love, it is, the way it's presented, it shows that something happened, it's hinted at it, there's something happened that basically altered the original path. So they did fall in love, but the character who Tybalt represents didn't die. Now, it is like a what-if scenario of Romeo and Juliet. So, what if they were discovered by someone, like by their parents? And it goes on from that. What would happen if they were discovered? What would they do? And because the characters come from rival gangs rather than rival families who own parts of different land, gangs typically are more violent, at least with the way they're presented. So the Romeo and Juliet, or Romeo betrayed Juliet. She believes he betrayed her. You don't find out until the end the reason why, but she believes that he betrayed her, by setting off a bomb in in a secret entrance, or an entrance to her family's home, killing basically the character whose equivalent is the nurse, so someone she cared about, as well as many other people from her family, setting off the rivalry again between the two families. Juliet sent to America to study. Roma is still part of the gang. Now, the way he's described, Roma is I like Roma's character. He's very calm. He's more gentle. Soft, I guess would be the word to describe him. Not in a bad way. The fact he still retains that softness, that kindness, even though he's forced to be part of that gang. He's the heir. He's the heir of the family. Even though he's forced to still remain with the family out of fear and out of survival, the fact he still has that kindness, that softness, that gentleness to him is nice. And the way he's written is brilliant. Juliet is the opposite of that. So she's no wallflower. Juliet in Romeo and Juliet to the play, she is more a passive person. She does go to extremes at the end, and I admire her for coming up with a plan to try and get out of an arranged marriage to someone who is probably an adult compared to her 13. But she was, in the play, she was very submissive, very quiet, most likely due to her age. But the Juliet that we get in These Violent Delights is angry. She is really angry. She's confident. She's really aggressive. She is willing to do whatever it takes in order to take down whatever it is that's causing the madness. She's willing to kill people to do it. Kill even someone that she's willing to kill anyone in her way. Because that betrayal, so Roma's betrayal, shaped her, because she was kind, she was soft and gentle, and willing to put aside the rivalry because of that love that she had for Roma. Roma's betrayal, it basically snapped her out of that mentality. She became less willing to go for peace because of the trauma. She was actually there when the bombing happened, which was an interesting way to show her character. So she's a strong female lead. She is sympathetic to a degree in that she didn't want to be part of this. Like, she didn't want anything to do with the violence. She did learn everything to do with the gang, but she didn't want to be part of the violence. And this one betrayal just pushed her. It's like, it kind of shifted her mentality. It's like, if I don't act like the person, like the heir for the Scarlet Gang, then they're going to just take advantage of me. And this person I love took advantage of me. I can't allow myself that weakness ever again. Anyway, so madness. Madness. So the characters, Roma and Juliet, are very well written. A lot of the side characters are very well written. Marshall, Benedict, Kathleen, Rosalind. They're very well written. Tyler, and Tyler as well, even though they get smaller screen time, smaller amounts of time on the page as their own POV, they are well written. Their motivations are clear. The way they interact, their connections with other characters is very clear. It's direct. All the characters have a purpose. So characterization and development of characters in this story, top notch. So the development of characters is well written. The rivalry between Juliet and Tyler, as members of the Kai family or the Scarlet Gang, is interesting because, again, that role. So even though Juliet is technically the heir, she's a girl. And Tyler, he acts like he should be the heir. So he's constantly undermining her, and he's constantly trying to find something that he can use to get her out of the way, so he could be the heir. Which leads to a confrontation at the end. So characters, extremely well written. The plot was engaging from beginning to end. The only reason why I didn't finish this as quickly as I normally do is because, well, I got distracted by other stuff. But story-wise, plot-wise, I was engaged throughout the whole thing. The first page grabbed me. The mystery elements of what is this monster, who created it, why is it doing this? It carried the story, but also the characters themselves carried the story. The characters felt like actual people, which is something I enjoy, because if they feel like real people, you are invested in their stories. So plot very well developed throughout the whole thing. So they do eventually find out who's the one that developed the monster, who created the monster. So it's more science rather than fantasy in this case. So the monster develops insects. The insects burrow into the brain. And basically they affect the brain in the way that makes the person basically claw their own throats out. And it spreads. So it's the insects spread through the hair, like lice, basically, which is scary. And it's even scarier in 1926 when that's the knowledge of things like the way things spread, the way diseases spread, isn't well known. So, isn't as well known because the science isn't as developed at that point. They have some understanding, but it's not to the same point as what we have now. Hold on. Right. So she discovers the insects, right? So the insects are buried in people's heads. She works together with the white flowers. So Roma, Marshall, Benedict, to find either a cure or to find a cure and to find the person who did all this. So the fact Roma and Juliet have to put aside their differences throughout the whole plot in order for the greater good, basically, to save their families, their gangs, and to stop the city from collapsing in on itself. So in the end, this is spoiler territory. In the end, we find out that the person she killed, that she thought was the one that transformed into the monster and spread the contagion, was not the person, and that it was actually the person's secretary. And a member of the Larkspur gang, basically, or family, has been basically spreading this contagion originally to get rid of the communists, but instead it targeted the red gang, the Scarlet Gang, and the White Flowers. So it went the opposite way from what he believed. So Paul, which I'm assuming is Paris's counterpart in the story, is in love with Juliet, and he created this madness, this monster, so that his father's business could grow through the use of vaccinations. Again, some of the vaccinations worked, some of them didn't, but yeah. Anyway, so he's in love with her. She's pissed, rightfully so, that he's basically just killed people from her family, from both families. And she kills him or at least it's the way it's written, it looks like she kills him, and she kills Kiren or something, the person who turns into the monster, in order to end this. And they kill the big insect, and they end up saving Roma's sister, who had the insects in her brain. She's like 10, and they end up saving her because the things detach from her brain and they're able to remove them. So it doesn't end there, but it goes. So the story with the monster, it works well. The mystery works well. The way the characters interact with the plot works well. And then we have so everything's solved, or they believe it's solved. They want to go on their separate ways. Marshall and Benedict are with Roma and Juliet at the time. And in comes Tyler. So the rivalry between Tyler and Juliet comes into contact. They believe her to be a traitor because she's with Roma, and they don't really understand that she's there because she's trying to save her people. And the way it ends in that scene, before it goes to an epilogue, the way it ends in that scene is it mirrors, or it's very similar to the fight between the fight that is in the actual play between Tybalt, Mercutio, Romeo, and I forgot the other friend, one of the other friends of Romeo. So it mirrors the conflict in that. Only Juliet is now in the middle of the conflict and she's witnessing it. That's one key difference. And Marshall is shot, and he basically says, "A plague on both your houses," which is a line from the actual play. So plague on both your houses. Basically, I curse you both. You got me killed. I'm an innocent person. You've got me killed. I've done nothing to any of you. You only killed me because I'm officially from the White Flowers. So it's a powerful moment in that, and it's a powerful moment in the play, which basically is saying both of you are doomed. You can't put your things aside. And then we find out, so Roma's mother was killed. Her throat was slit. People were told that she died because of the illness. Then we find out, because Roma bombed, or got the Scarlet gang bombed and killed many of the people, Juliet was so furious at what happened that she told the members of the Scarlet gang where Roma's mother was hidden, which basically led to Roma's mother being killed. This is just after Marshall was shot, and she reveals it. And she basically says, "An eye for an eye. We've killed one of them. Now let them go." So Marshall's on the ground. She's shot him, and he's not moving. So she's killed one of Roma's friends. So now this betrayal and bitterness has kind of been set off again. Tyler is kind of satisfied, and he lets them go. He lets the others go, and him and his friends disappear, and they don't tell anyone about it. And it ends there before it goes to an epilogue. The epilogue is interesting in that the way it ended with Marshall's death was actually a complete ending. It didn't need the epilogue. But the epilogue sets up the next book in the series, which is why it's there. So the purpose is clear. But I also want to point out, I hate the ending of the epilogue. I know it sets up the next book, but it's a cliffhanger. And I hate cliffhangers. Okay, it means I have to wait like another year, 2 years. Which is kind of why I didn't end my book on a cliffhanger. Because I really don't like cliffhangers. Because it ends on a cliffhanger. And it pisses me off. Because, surprise, Paul has basically, from his death, or not long after his death, before his death, has said, after say he's died a certain maybe he set it up so after a certain amount of time after he's dead to automatically send a message. Send the rest. So the one that was the insect or the monster, it wasn't the only one. He had some in reserve, and now he's like, you know what? You killed me. I'm going to kill you. One thing I did like about the epilogue was that we find out that Juliet didn't murder. He didn't murder Marshall. She didn't murder Marshall. That's one thing I did like because Marshall is alive and in hiding in a Scarlet safe house. So I like that she didn't kill him, that she faked his death. But Romeo believes his friend is dead. Benedict believes his friend is dead and that Juliet killed him. So in the next book, that even though towards the end of the book, Roma and Juliet's relationship looked like it was starting to mend, Marshall's death, or believed fake death, drives a wedge in them. I'm kind of rambling, but yeah. So I really didn't like. I hate cliffhangers, but I did enjoy this. I really did enjoy it, and I enjoyed it a lot more than the original Romeo and Juliet. It deviated enough from the original material that, not that Shakespeare's material was actually original, because Shakespeare actually took from a poem, an Italian poem, that was written many, many, many years before his book, his play. Anyway, so deviated enough from the source material that it can stand on its own. Enough things from the source material that I did like in there. There's a few quotes, a few things said here and there within the book that is actually from the source material, but large part of it is, pretty much nearly all of it is an original story. The author has drawn inspiration from their culture when writing it. So characters, plot, well written. Themes. So the theme of betrayal is throughout this. Love and betrayal and the way they're connected. The themes are well written and intertwined throughout the story. And it's a very enjoyable read. So, I better quickly end this because this is getting very long. For enjoyment, honestly, I'd give it 5 stars. I loved it. I mean, there are a few things that I didn't like so much, but it works. The way it's written works. It has multiple POVs. So be aware, if you do pick this up, it has multiple POVs. Like, practically every main character. Like, Roma, Juliet. Marshall has a POV. Benedict has a POV. Rosalind. There's a lot of POVs. They're all written in third person. So it kind of... It causes less of a headache. But there's a lot of POVs. So be aware of that. That's the only thing I didn't really like. It still was a powerful story. I just don't like that many POVs. I do write dual POV and multi-POV, but I don't write multi-POVs in the one chapter. Some of them you have 3 POV switches within a chapter, although there is space so you can kind of see where it changes. Anyway, so 5 stars. I really did love it. As a tool, as for English, so this is actually, I don't know if it's written, I don't know if it's YA. It reads like a YA book. So as an English text, so for studying in English, this would work really well in year 10 or even in year 11. maybe even year 12, so the upper end of secondary school. In the upper end of secondary school, even in literature, this would work well in literature. Pretty sure in literature they look at adaptations and the differences between adaptations, how adaptations work. So this can be used to examine the adaptation as an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. And it can be compared, and you can compare the themes and the storytelling, type of storytelling and the medium used and things like that. And so it can be used in English, in the upper end of English, as well as literature. It can be compared on its own. It can be compared to Romeo and Juliet, the play versus, so as a media, the movie of Romeo and Juliet with, say, the DiCaprio movie with These Violent Delights. So a lot of comparisons use a written text and a visual text, and it can be compared quite effectively, and you can draw out similarities and differences in the theme, setting, and all that sort of stuff. So it can be used really well and effectively. Now, this is a really new book. There are no resources available. I don't even know if there's any chapter summaries or plot summaries available for this because it's so new. So that means if it's used as a text, do they need to either wait a year or so for those things to be developed, or they have to make the resources themselves, which is not something many teachers want to do because we are very time poor with teaching classes and all that. So, can it be used effectively for education? Yes. But because there aren't any resources as a text for education, I give it 3 stars. I give it 3 stars. It's a really good book. Students would enjoy it. Most of them would enjoy it, both as comparative and as an individual narrative text. But the lack of resources mean it's not as ideal as, say, Macbeth, or the original Romeo and Juliet, which has plenty of material available for people to use and help back up their teaching. Yeah. So, have you read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong? What did you think of it? And would you read the second book in the series? Let me know down below. Also, I have another video coming out on Sunday, I believe. It's a book review on The Deathless Girls. I will also be organising a live stream for this Saturday coming up at around 1 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time. So I'll be doing a live writing sprint, probably for about an hour and a half, to see if we can get some words in. Anyway, that's it. If you have any books you want to recommend I review or read, let me know down below. If you haven't already, if you want to be notified when I upload, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.